you?
I'm good.
Oh, good.
I'm good.
All right. Well, take everybody back to the beginning. So I think everybody remembers that you were half black, half Filipino, and that the team at Buna Murray was so impressed with your audition, because back in those days you had to do like a VHS audition tape. And so they come across your tape and they're like, this girl's piss her pants funny. So you get cast and you're like 20 years old, I guess, on Real World New Orleans. And that was actually a pretty fun season. And it still was like in the good part of the real world, where the idea of taking these 7 people from different parts of the world, sticking them together and seeing what happens, because you had somebody who was Mormon and she's having this whole come of age experience with a multicultural house. So were you as excited about joining the real world as I can imagine anyone in our age group could have been? Because that seemed like at the time, like the most incredible experience to have.
Right. So at the time that I had auditioned for the show was still, in that space, like you said, where it was really cool and sort of like coming into this like pop cultural societal picture. It wasn't like reality TV was a whole genre thing like it is now. So there was still space for it to be authentically 7 random people getting to know each other in tight quarters, So when I sent my tape in, really what had happened was I had watched a marathon of Hawaii. And I remember watching it. And like looking at it like from a statistical standpoint, because I was working for a nursing home litigation law firm. So you can imagine that the work was, not exactly fulfilling, mind numbing, but my bosses were cool. So I had taken work home and I was watching the marathon and I was sorting through medical records. And I'm looking and I'm like, oh, one brown girl who has a lot of fun. Granted, it was Ruthie drinking, but I was like, I think I could do that. Okay. So I borrowed, back then a camcorder. I sat down and I did the tape. And then from there, it just went really fast. I remember it going really fast. I got a call back in a couple days. And then after that, it was just constant interviewing. So like when I got the show, and I think you'd maybe interviewed Andrew Hogel, because I did my little research before I got on here. When I got the show, and I started, filming it and everything, I was really very excited because A, I was getting out of, a job that wasn't necessarily fun. B, it was an opportunity for me to escape Florida, because where I come from, small town Florida, people don't leave. You stay there, you work at Progressive Auto Insurance, you buy a townhouse, you put in purple carpeting, and you go on with your life. So this was very exciting. And it was a great experience, I have to say. It was great when it was great, and it was not great when it wasn't, Yeah.
Well, Kelly Wolf told me that during the season that it became at times really difficult because you so badly wanted to just get away. And so she had this boyfriend, and that was kind of her way to escape. Did you ever also feel trapped? Like, I'm suffocated by this. I need to get some air. I need to like experience something without a cameraman in my face.
I would say I didn't really get it yet until, because, you do your interviews away from the house. And when they're interviewing you, they're kind of interviewing you about things that already happened or that might happen, but the questions are posed to you in such a way where now you're presented with information that you didn't really have before you sat in that interview, So what happens is while you're answering these questions, you then go back to the house to get more answers from whomever you heard about, like you get this piece of information and you want more information. So like, I felt like for me, there kind of wasn't an escape, because looking at it now through my, healed and adult lens, I was sort of like both narrator and comic relief, but also drama. So like, it was a lot for me
Yeah.
but I didn't know I didn't know it was a lot while I was in it. You know what I'm saying? Like I was fully
Yeah.
invested in the experience, and there was no escape. Who was I going to know in New Orleans? On top of that, they gave us this gigantic Yukon truck, and I'm like 4'11". So where was I driving to? Where?
Right. I would imagine that you felt exhausted once filming ended and went back into your real life. And did you feel like kind of being like spit out of a tornado after it was over?
That is a really good analogy because remember I went into it being so excited about this experience. And then to be completely honest, what 20 something isn't, given, which at the time to me was $1 billion, $5,000 and told you're going to be famous. That was really titillating to me. That was really enticing. And then the show's over, you do your press tour or whatever, the things that they, Peter Murray sets you up to do. And then you're kind of just floating out there on your own, figuring this out, but then also really very famous, but not very rich.
Mm-hmm.
So like, I had, a 98 Honda Civic with the brakes going out of it with all my stuff in it in the back seat. And I moved to LA because that's what, I was told I should do. And every Tuesday night, it was a full-blown panic attack because it was like, oh God, which part of my personality are they going to dissect on national television? And then on top of that, now Wednesday's going to come and I'm going to leave the house and I'm going to be Melissa from the real world from the top of the day to the end of the day. And some days you have good days, but other days it was like, oh my God, I'm Melissa from the real world every single freaking day. I'm exhausted from this. And not having the language or the understanding that this is anxiety. This is not normal. You're handling it as best you can for a person who's 20 something and extremely famous and not rich.
Mm-hmm.
So it was exhausting, but also rewarding in some ways. I would not do it. I would do it again, but I would do the aftermath a little differently.
Within the confines of the show, did you experience anything profound? Like meeting somebody who is Mormon or meeting somebody who is from Arkansas or meeting somebody from, a white family. Were there any experiences that you had or conversations that you had that at all shifted your perspective? So in other words, it was successful, that your experience was successful because it was part of what they set out to accomplish, which was to shift a young person's perspective based on living with other people that they may not know in their own circle of friends.
Oh yeah, 100%. I think Jamie and I had become good friends throughout the course of the show, and of course it was packaged a little. Melissa, I think they packaged it sort of like Melissa has a crush on Jamie in the house, but
definitely.
Really the dynamic ended up being, wow, here is this moneyed frat guy that I definitely don't have in common with, that I should not be able to even have a conversation with because I am, small town brown girl who is hyper vocal and specific about race relations and everything else under the sun that, your typical white frat guy is not trying to talk about. And we came away from that genuinely friends. So that was a good experience. And the other thing is I also went in there naively believing that me and the black guy would automatically hit it off. We see that did not go well. So a lot of the expectations that I had were definitely turned on their head. But then, I think for me, the real learning was after the fact, navigating that space. Because what happens is you're in it. And then the whole thing starts to sort of get diluted, like the experience itself. Like I can't really remember. Like I remember for many years, 2-3 years after people come on and be like, oh my God, I love that part on the show where you said, and like, I would really seriously have blocked that out. I'd be like, yeah, me too. So cool. And then walk away and be like, did that happen?
Yeah. But did you get an enormous amount of people that came to you and said, I was so glad you were on the show because, there are not a lot of shows on television that represent people that look like us. So maybe they were Filipino or Black or they were biracial. because I
Yes.
always thought that show is really progressive in that way, in having cast members that were not just white, or if they were white, maybe they were had a religious faith that was, considered a minority faith in the United States of America. So I know that Norman Corpy has said countless people have come up to him throughout the years and said, I was comfortable about coming forward with my sexuality because you were the first person on television that had been open. So conversely, I would think racially that you've had a ton of people say that to you.
Yeah, that actually is also one of the cooler parts of it. And I'm still like fielding that stuff today. So like I'll go on and through my social media or whatever, and I'll just meet random people who will be like, wow, you were the first person that was saying the things
that
I thought I wanted to say, and I didn't have the words to say them because I am biracial and I grew up in an all white environment, or I had been met with racism and didn't know on the spot what to say about it. And there you were saying it. And like, I felt so seen. So there were young people, there were definitely young people who had no business watching the show. I'm talking like 12 and 13-year-olds who saw me for the first time. And then that shaped their teen years and their college years, because here was this person who was, maniacally biracial on the show, as they showed. And it sort of was like, kind of like the satellite character was me going to be the person that talked about race. And if you think about it, in 2000, not that was, groundbreaking, but it was scary to talk about that stuff. And then be faced with the emails and the forums. Because, back then MTV used to have those online forums, and you could talk about what happened on the show, and people would be like, oh my God, everything she talks about is always about race. And it was like, for me, everything wasn't always about race. Race for me was like the weather. I was just, stating facts, and you were responding to them because you in your environment, however white or whatever, hadn't had that experience, and this person never talked to you about it, and it made you uncomfortable. But like for me, I wasn't uncomfortable talking about it because this is my life. This is who I am, and all of that. So that was cool to have people say, you opened my mind to that. I never thought about it that way. Or I never saw myself, and there you were. So that is cool, and that remains cool. That's still cool, because I think putting conversations about race in like a accessible way in year 2000 was cool. Didn't feel cool sometimes, but it was cool.
You leave the show and you get this great job on television, Girls Behaving Badly. Tell me about that.
Oh, wow. So I left the show, and the first thing I did, oh my gosh, do you remember Late Night with Craig Kilborn?
Of course.
I went on Craig Kilborn's show, and I remember looking out into the audience, and here I am. I think I might have even had braces. I got braces right after the show.
That. Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, because my dental was, oof. I've got that fixed, by the way, if you want to let your listeners know I got my teeth together. I went on the show, and I remember saying to the audience, I need a job. Let me know. And the producer at the time of the Jamie Foxx show, he contacted me, and I was doing PA work, like, bringing smoothies to Gladys Knight on the set, like PA work, mass copies and stuff. And that was cool, and it had its run, and I loved Jamie Foxx forever for that opportunity. And then after that, my agent was like, okay, well, we have to do something with you. You can't, you're not just going to do that. So I did some groundling stuff. I did some stand-up comedy for a minute. Oh God, that was terrifying, as I'm sure you know how terrifying stand-up comedy can be, although kind of rewarding, but also terrifying. And I went on that audition for Girls Behaving Badly, and it worked out because it was like an all-girl comedy show for the Oxygen Network. There was a huge media campaign around it. But then we started filming the show, and I'm still Melissa from the real world. So like if I'm supposed to be, talking to marks and confusing them, or like I'm supposed to be this girl in a flower shop, pulling a prank on whomever, it was like they had set up these shots all day producers had found all of these people to prank, and then like in the middle of filming the prank, it would be, wait, are you Melissa from the real world? And I have to be like, no, I'm Lisa from the flower shop. So after a while, they sort of transitioned my position on the show to more like voiceover work and hosting, like packages, which was better for me because I was deep in the throes of my anxiety at that time. So like trying to operate from a funny space while you're in your head about, are they going to ask me if I'm Melissa from the real world, was super not easy. So that experience still was very cool because then it got me into hosting and, you know, and I met a lot of cool people. The lady that played Chandrella Avery, the lady that played LaFonda, like I remember being on set and her coming back from filming that movie and being like, yeah, she's like, it's just this weird small movie. I was like, no. And the way she was explaining it, I was like, no, that doesn't sound like it's a weird small movie. That sounds like it's going to be amazing. She's like, really? She's like, it's so strange. And then there it was, Napoleon Dynamite, a huge movie. So like tangentially, all the people on that show went on to become giant, huge, Chelsea included, things. So like it was a great experience in that sense.
And did you keep in touch with them when you left LA, or did you just kind of close that chapter and move on?
Yep. Wow. Yeah, they said you are the Diane Sawyer of talking to reality TV. But yes, girl. I just, you know what? I just closed it.
Yeah.
I you know what it was, and I don't know if you had this experience, or I'm sure you've talked to other reality people that have had this experience where it's constant going on auditions and trying to branch out and not be the you that people know you for, but you walk in the room, hey, oh wait, you're the little girl from the real, okay, yeah, and but now I got to play, you know, Susie, who's going to say these two lines, but you already know me as Melissa from the real world, and then you get the call back, but then you kind of don't get it because somebody else is going to get it. So like it was a lot of that. So I was just, rejection was just on top of being, I was like, ooh, and getting close every time. It was like, you know, you got to have a really, really tough skin to do it for years at a time. And I did it, and I tried it, and it was cool. And then at one point I was just like, wow, I'm only getting older. This doesn't really feel that fun, or it doesn't really feel like me anymore. Yeah. So maybe I should just try something else. And I had been dating someone who was in New York, and he was ready to not do long distance. And, you know, I was still doing college speaking engagements. So it was a lot of travel, still doing Girls Behaving Badly. And then one day I was just like, man, I'm cool. And I remember calling my manager and just being like, I think I'm going to move to Long Island. And she was like, what? I was like, yeah, I think I'm just going to do that and see what happens. And then I got married, and 3 kids later, that's what it was. And I found that my kids and becoming a mom, that was like something I could super hyper focus on, which sounds like so cliche, but like really, you know, I found a sort of calling. Here's this thing. I have these 3 little people that I could shape. I like them a lot. They're funny. Yeah. They're cool. And I feel happy. So,
well, when you were going on the speaking tour too, because that was really very popular at the time, was that a lot of people who had been on MTV shows were paid by colleges to make appearances. And you're getting older, and you've had a little bit of professional experience within the entertainment business, and you've met somebody, and you're trying to cultivate that relationship. Was it difficult to go on those speaking engagements because your audience is so young and they're yearning for the person that you were at 20 on television? So is there a part that was difficult too? Like, these people want me to be Melissa of 2000, and I'm Melissa almost Beck, who's about to become a mother.
Wow, Diane. Okay.
Well, I'm just thinking, like, I think about all of you guys that were on the shows, and it's like, you know, all these colleges were reaching out. All of you guys were being paid to go to all these bars and colleges, and these kids are like, let's do Goldschlager shots and like just talk about what happened on a TV show 4 or 5 years ago. And you're like, I'm an adult and I'm trying to like create a professional life for myself, if not a personal life. So what was that like for you guys?
What ended up happening was, I just sort of compartmentalized.
Yeah.
It was, I just get into a zone where I become professional Melissa from the real world. I have this, I'm prepared for what they're going to ask me. I have great, as a stand-up comedian would. I have the material ready. I have the beginning, the middle, and the end. I know when I'm going to hit them with the punchline. Very rarely would they steer. I know what they're going to ask me. Very rarely would they go, to a different place where I had to actually, think about how I'm going to answer this. And I got really good at deflection, so it was in and out. I go to a random place in Indiana. I get picked up in a Toyota Corolla by a student named Jennifer, who is 10 years younger than me. And she's so excited to see me. And I'm thinking, this probably is definitely not safe. I don't know you. We're driving through a corn maze and you're a student driver. And then you're going to take me to Holiday Inn Express. I'm going to check in. You're going to come back and pick me up. I'm going to go on stage for an hour and a half. We're going to then go to Applebee's with the student union. And you guys are going to ask me more questions. And then I'm going to go back to my room. And then in the morning, you're going to pick me right back up and take me. It just became a job.
Yeah.
But also, I had to remember that I, Melissa from the real world, in the capacity of that job, was important to them. And I would have to step out of that compartmentalized thing and be like, I'm a person who wants to connect with this person who's excited to see me because that's the right and cool thing to do. And also I might meet someone that has an impact on my life. You never know. Because I got to see literally most of the United States through those speaking engagements. So it became a job, but I also would have to remember to not get jaded and not be uncool and to be appreciative of that experience, because what other job could Melissa from the real world do in the meantime? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. So I always wondered, it was very clear that you kind of it seemed like you shut the world out and you were living a very private life.
I made that choice because I started feeling really gross in LA, just like getting close and then not getting it, and the anxiety and stuff behind it. And then when I moved to New York, I came specifically because I had gotten a literary agent. And when we got together, I was like, I'm not just going to move to New York and be a childless housewife. I got to do something. So I had a literary agent. And at the time I was pitching a book, and we had sent it to like a dozen publishers. And at the time it was no. And I wanted to write specifically about, everybody kept saying, you got to write a book about being biracial. And I was like, yeah, that's cool. My whole life is that. But I also want to write a book in my voice about that experience, but also my adult experience dealing with that. And then everything outside of that I just wasn't, at the time, they were like, who wants to read that? And I was like, all the people that have ever read my blog. What do you mean?
Exactly.
And like, and at the time, like, they said, I remember the note was that I was too abrasive, and I was like, okay, then you're just not getting it, because this is a brand, this is a genre, like the way that I'm talking about things that I see and observe, it's a thing. Which, as you can see, there's entire podcasts, blogs, TV shows with that voicing now. I try to tell y'all.
Yeah.
So like, I've kept up my Twitter feed. I have social media. People just got to find it. And if you find it and you like it, that's cool. But it doesn't, everybody that's in there sort of understands the space I'm in and lets me be my whole real person without having to tap into that, hey, welcome to this Prankapalooza. I'm Melissa Beck, your host. Like, right. I don't.
Like a radio DJ. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
So here we are. It's 2020 and you have 3 kids. Now, they all have names that sound religious. Did you convert? I
did. My husband's Jewish, regular, nice Long Island Jew from Merritt. And we were married actually already. And my first daughter was already born when I decided on my own to convert. So a lot of people think that I converted because I married a Jewish guy, but really I was secretly studying and observing all of the life paths of Judaism around me. And also Long Island Judaism is very specific. It's not regular
Right.
Judaism. It's Long Island specific. So I was learning about this culture now living here in this very specific weird place because I didn't grow up like this. So I converted, but we named the baby Shalom, my first daughter, because we honeymooned in Israel, and Shalom means hello, and it's everywhere there. And it's also just a pretty name in that model, Shalom Harlow. And I was like, you know what? I like the name Shalom. She was originally going to be Maisie Shalom. And then my husband was like, we should just do Shalom because what kid's going to be named Shalom? I was like, no kid's going to be named Shalom.
No.
And then I converted, and a whole other life thing happened where I converted because one of my close friends, an older woman, had passed, and I used to spend a lot of time with her talking about Judaism and all that before I decided. And then when she passed, it was sort of just, I got a sign, a message, and I just went and I did it without telling anybody at first. And then I told everybody that I was in conversion classes and I was going to do it, and everybody was happy for me. So I really needed it to be just my own choice. I didn't want to be swayed by other people around me.
Yeah.
So it ended up being a great choice. I love being Jewish. My credit score went through the roof the second I dunked in that mikveh bath. See, inappropriate. You can't say that. So then we had Maja, and Maja is just a name I made up because it's M-A-J-A, and my husband's name is Justin, so it's Melissa and Justin always. I always say it's like, I hope we don't break up because we'll have to add a T on there, Melissa. Melissa and Justin ain't together, but hopefully we'll stay together because she exists. And then the third baby is Shira, and Shira means song in Hebrew, and my husband is a musician, and we wanted something musical without being too corny, and so that's how they were named.
Very pretty.
Thank you.
And so you've been living this like quiet life, but you have a new podcast. So I want you to tell us about that, and what else are you working on? I mean, obviously it's not a lot because we're in quarantine. You have 3 kids, but Yeah,
I'm working on just sanity. No, what happened was this lovely lady from Ohio. I also I've been approached for years. You want to be a guest on my podcast? Also, MTV specific, challenge related, real world related. Oh, yeah. People have contacted me for years. Will you be a guest on my podcast? And for me, I just didn't really want to revisit that. I just thank you for asking me, but no thank you. So it was known that I don't really do that because I just been hunkered down. But this woman, Amanda, she contacted me, and she had a podcast called Your Mom Has a Podcast. And she's one of these people that really enjoys podcasts, understands podcasting world, all that. We ended up talking, and then we had some technical difficulties, and she had to call me back. So the second time we talked, we ended up just really talking. She also has 3 children. We talked about social anxiety. That was the topic of the first episode that I did for her show. And then we just kept talking. And in the course of talking, we were both like, maybe this is a podcast. 2 random people that don't really know each other, even though I'm Melissa from the real world and she kind of knows me on the surface, getting to know each other over the phone. And then when the pandemic happened, it was sort of like, okay, this is really a podcast because what else do we have to do? Mm-hmm. And so from that, it's every week we talk on the phone, and it's just 2 women getting to know each other the old fashioned way. I mean, who talks on the phone? It's weird, but we do.
That's true.
And it's been really fun. It's been really fun. And for all the ways that we know for all the ways that we have stuff in common, there are so many ways that we don't have in common. So just the interaction, because people that have followed me on social media or Twitter know a lot about me just through the snippets that I've given them. So they're like, wait, Amanda doesn't know that Melissa's not going to go for that. I can't believe she just said that to her. So we have a really fun and interactive group of listeners who are also chiming in. So it's 2 strangers getting to know each other, but at the same time that you're getting to re-know Melissa as maybe you knew her from the real world, as I get to know this lady Amanda from Ohio. So, and I don't know if that exists out there, but it's cool and it's been fun.
And where can people find it? So if they're looking for it and like the name and where to find it.
It's Imperfect Strangers podcast. You can find us on Apple, Spotify. If you go to our Instagram, it's Imperfect Strangers _podcast, and on there's a link tree, and it'll take you to all the places where you can find us. There's a Twitter, there's a Instagram, there's a Facebook, Imperfect Strangers podcast. And I know in podcasting world you have to say the name of the podcast 1,000 times. She taught me that. So it's on, it's everywhere you can find a podcast, and it's been really fun. I tell you what, I don't know how you have 5 kids and you do this twice a week, honey, because it is a job.
Well, that's the truth. What's the one thing that you wish that people would have learned about you in the real world that, people that may have watched years ago? Like, what's the one thing you wish the cameras would have captured?
Wow. The cameras really did not capture any piece of my interest outside of, racism. I felt like there was this whole other person. So I grew up listening to very random and specific hardcore music, which is why my husband and I get along. And so if people listen to Glassjaw, which is my husband's band, it made no sense to them that he would marry Melissa from the real world, because why would he marry a girl who was on MTV of all places? That's like so, and what do you say? Antithetical, anti, how do you say that word?
Antithetical.
It's the antithesis of.
Antithesis.
Yes, that. Yes. Yeah, it made no sense. But really, I grew up in the same music scene that he grew up, and I think that is just a fun fact that people don't know about me at all. So, like, I have a wealth of knowledge of music, and that's just, no one knows about it. But my husband figured it out, and that's how we ended up being married, because we have very similar and specific niche interests. And it's really been fun to be the wife of Glassjaw and have his fans figure out, they're like, oh, weird, she knows about this stuff. Yeah. So I wish MTV would have done that, because it would have made me a more, a fuller person.
Yeah.
There was just like a whole side of me that there was, I was a journalism student. They didn't talk about that. There was a lot that they didn't talk about. So like, I felt like, which was fine. I served the purpose on the show, and that was cool. But like, I'm a multifaceted person, and that just was not on there.
And it's nice to hear you like talking, and it's great to hear about your experience earlier in the show. And I'm so happy that you're so happy with your family. It's been really great to catch up.
Kate, Casey, who are you? Thank you. That's really nice. Thank you very much. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. Nice lady.